Retro.
Are you an aspiring Jedi, or do you dabble with the dark side of the Force?
Regardless of whether you fancy yourself a defender of the light or an aspiring Sith Lord, you're going to need a lightsaber.
Podcast Stardust is pleased to partner with Saber Masters, the creators of high-quality, durable, and affordable lightsabers.
Saber Masters is preparing to launch the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, and right now you can get 2 for the price of 1.
So, check out the link in our show notes and go get your Ultimate Lightsabers from Saber Masters.
And don't forget to use our referral code STARDUST to save $10 at checkout.
And each purchase using our referral code helps support Podcast Stardust.
This is Heather Antost, Gonk enthusiast, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. If they talk about anything else than Dr. Aphra, they're doing it wrong.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And it's time for our weekly look at some Star Wars news. But before we dive into the latest, Jay, please remind everybody where you can be found around the internet.
All right. Well, we are very easily found on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The Just is aligned. The signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. Let's get to it. This is the week's Star Wars news, and we've got a couple of 30-second teaser trailers that have been making their ways around social media and Disney Plus. And I actually saw it during the weekend when I was watching some sports. The first one is the Plan teaser, and it features images of Endara fighting May. And we get to see a young May with Soul making some comments on training May, but now she's a student of the dark side, and Acolyte. We get some shots of the witches. We get Kelnaka, the Jedi Wookiee, with his green lightsaber, which was cool. But then we get the big reveal of Ernestra Rowe using her Lightwhip, turning her lightsaber into a Lightwhip. What'd you think about this, Jay?
Yes, I'm pumping my fist in the air literally right now. And I was so excited when you sent me this text and you sent me the link to this and you said, this is what you've been waiting for. And I knew right away, even without you saying it, that that's what this was going to be. So yes, definite wish come true. And it looks beautiful. I mean, just from that, it's a really quick, literally like half a second shot, if that. But it's glorious. So great.
I was so concerned how that Lightwhip was going to play out on screen. I thought it would be wonky looking, but we get to see her, like, she twists the palm of her lightsaber, and it's like from over her shoulder that the blade turns to this whip and goes flying around above her. And like you said, it's a half a second or so long, but it did the job. It got me sold on that. I was really, really excited about that when I saw it. So yeah, we just been talking about this. Those reports, that was the quote unquote confirmation. But we were at the time was like, I don't know from this quote that I can actually take that as a confirmation. But you don't get much more of a confirmation than this.
Oh, yeah. And so it's just such a great feeling to know that we're going to get more of that. So teaser indeed.
Yeah. Anything else from this particular teaser that stood out to you?
Well, with the Winter World too, we see a little bit more of a glimpse of what could potentially be setting up what was the catalyst for a lot of these types of characters and instances that have shifted. So that for me is like, okay, this is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But Kelnaka with his lightsaber, yay.
Yeah, that was the big one for me.
So
seeing him with his green lightsaber and Wookiee Jedi. I'm there for it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The second 30-second teaser we got is called Evolve. And it starts with May waking up in a panic in a snowy-looking cavern, room in a cave, something like that. We get various shots of Endara and Saul. There's a statement that Jedi are being murdered. We get to see May running in the snow. We see her pleading with the Jedi, I didn't do it. Please believe me. And then there is, some title cards that go by that say before the Empire, before the Menace, there was an Acolyte. And then we get a shot of Kelnaka swinging his lightsaber, and there's a Jedi jumping over the blade.
Yeah.
We see what looks kind of like a bronzed helmet with a stylized mouth painted on it, lying on the ground. We see Yord fighting someone with a red lightsaber. We get various shots of other Jedi, some ships tumbling through the asteroid field. That's an image that we've seen repeated a number of times. And then we see May summoning a lightsaber to her hand, and Sol saying, "I sense something dark," before May puts a knife to Jackie's throat. Another image that we've seen a few times. So, okay, with that rundown, what stood out to you on this one?
Well, this teaser, I feel like out of all of them so far, has really ignited my interest and,
Mhm.
just in what's going on. And I love the way that they set this up, before the Empire, before the Menace. I mean, what a great usage, especially with the 25th anniversary. But the thing that stands out to me is just obviously this has got to be a flashback with May pleading, "I didn't do it. Please believe me." And I went
Mhm.
back and watched that several times, and she's wearing some sort of almost like an army issued kind of jacket with
Mhm.
some sort of insignia on it. And so that's very intriguing to me. But again, and I know for you, same thing with Kalnaka, the lightsaber and the Jedi jumping over the blade. That's like, okay, interesting. So for me, those are the two things that stood out. But what about you?
So Leslie Headland has told us that this series is not what we think it is. That
Mm-hmm.
just when you think you've got it figured out, it's going to turn on its head, and just when you think you've understood it again, it's going to flip and be something else. That I've not watched Russian Dolls, but that's how she described that series, and this is going to follow in those footsteps. And so when I see May pleading with the Jedi, "I didn't do it, please believe me," and we see her running away from them in this thing, it definitely strikes those vibes.
Mm,
And so that's very
okay.
intriguing. I'm curious to see what that is. There's been a lot of other images and clips for the Acolyte recently, with her fighting with various daggers and things like that. And, and she's always got the lower half of her face covered when she's, I'm calling it assassin mode because we get the quote here, "Jedi are being murdered."
Right.
And so, I'm assuming that that's what's going on. Yet again, she looks like such a cool character. It's an incredible look that they've given her, and I like uh, Indara in this. I've been calling her all kinds of things in our Indara and stuff like that, but it's Indara. I looked it up on StarWars.com
Oh, okay.
uh, today, and and then Soul looks really cool as well. There's a tribute to him that's out there floating around on social media as well, where the cast all talks about how great it was working with him and how fantastic he is. So yeah, on this one, there's been a lot of these trailers have been like great moments. This one, I think, gave us like some real hints at story, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
kind of what you were talking about as well.
Right, right, for sure. Yeah, and I think with all of these, and especially with what Leslie Headland has said with the way that she cast some of these characters, she went all the
Mhm.
way back to just watching Squid Game and saying, "Okay, that has to be one of my characters." And
Yeah,
I
that
just
was
thought that
Master
was
Soul when she saw
yeah.
him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I just thought that was super cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, so yeah, you can find these all over the place online, and I'll put links to the YouTube
Mhm.
posts as well in our show notes if you want to check them out if you haven't done so already. Over on StarWars.com, you can find Amandla Stenberg playing Star Wars music on the violin. And what is remarkable about this is that they went to John Williams and got his permission first, and he granted it only if he could write the arrangement for her to play.
Yeah.
And on top of that, she's doing this in the newly christened John Williams Music Building. So there's been an
Mhm.
entire building dedicated to him on that. She's quite the virtuoso when it comes to playing the violin. I had no idea she had these skills. What did you think after watching this clip?
I had no clue, but what an extraordinary experience and opportunity.
Mhm.
And I absolutely treasure the way that Amandla reacted to all of this and just the
Mhm.
story that she told that she had been playing violin since about the 3rd grade and that she was actually doing this on her grandfather's violin.
Mhm.
And so she was just going to jump in and do it. But I just, like you pointed out, we've got the new John Williams Music Center, and just the fact that the maestro himself said, yeah, not only will I give you permission, but let me write a violin solo just for you so that
Mhm.
you could do it. And then she was able to record it in that studio, and then just you could just tell that everyone else's reaction to it as well was just, it was such a wonderful moment for everyone involved. And I'm just I just appreciate that so much, because I have such appreciation for the music, which I know you do too, but
Mhm.
just the artist, that goes into the artistry that goes into it. It just I'm speechless.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. It was good to know a little bit more about her here and
Yeah.
this and that, that was her background. I mean, I can't say that I've been a big Amanda Stenberg fan my entire life, because prior to her getting this role, I'm not sure I've actually seen her in anything. But it was, we've been kind of fawning over her because how big a Star Wars fan she was already. And we've talked
Mhm.
about that a number of times. That, the people that show up in Star Wars don't have to be Star Wars fans, but it's always just a little bit cooler when they are.
Mhm.
And the people that are making Star Wars, and she is, and Leslie Headland is, and so it's been really cool to see how much that meant to her.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was only familiar with her before this through the Hunger Games because she played
Mhm.
Little Rue, but that was when she was so much younger.
Yeah, I've read those books. I've never actually seen the movies, so
Wow.
I'll put it on my list
Yeah,
for
you
someday.
should.
Okay, well, speaking of books, let's head over to the High Republic. We have our first excerpt from Temptation of the Force, which is written by Tessa
Tessa
Gratton.
Gratton.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which is written by Tessa Gratton and arriving on June 11th, 2024. And we've been provided that excerpt over on StarWars.com. And it features Avar paying a visit to Elzar in the Jedi Temple before she heads out the next day on a mission to test new technology for crossing the Stormwall. She arrives with some favored mead and pastries that she, Elzar, and Stellan used to enjoy, and she was on muscle memory bought 3 of these buns because that's what she
Yeah.
always did, and then only to realize afterwards that she got one too many and she couldn't make herself stop. She couldn't bear the thought of not getting 3 for one for her fallen friend. And then at the end, she kind of invites Elzar to join her on these missions, but he resists. So, what did you think about this excerpt?
Well, I think it's what's really interesting is that in the article, Tessa Gratton talks about the fact that this was written last,
Hmm.
and it was kind of a circle back to their relationship and the way that things had been left up to this point. But what I really appreciated about this is obviously getting this first little taste, but just the fact that, we've got to know Avar and Elzar so well, and of course Stellan, may he rest in peace, through these novels and through the experience of the High Republic, and just to get back into their relationship and how comfortable it is,
Hmm.
even though it was also strained for a while, was just, again, it was just such a like putting on an old jacket. And it was just so comfortable to start reading this and just jumping right into it. And it ended so quickly. And I was like, wait, that was it? I want more, and I know I shouldn't, I got the whole Anakin thing going on. But it was, and I feel like Tessa Gratton always does such a great job of really describing the very particulars of what you should be seeing in your head, which all of the authors do. But I don't know, I just really am into this story already so much, and I can't wait for more.
Yeah, I like the excerpt as well, and it's interesting. We've kind of talked in the past and teased this book based on its title. Temptation of the Force.
Yeah.
Two
The
Jedi,
Harlequin,
repressed
yeah.
emotions, and something you would kind of expect to see on a romance novel that you'd pick up in the checkout lane at your grocery store or something like that. But and the description of this book kind of hints at that as well. That there's going to be some rekindling of an old flame and things that are going on as well. And the way it kind of reads toward the end of this, it's like, there's this relationship going on, and one of them's about to move across country. And then at the last second, it's like, oh, you could come with,
Yeah.
just that kind of coyness of that notion there going on. So I like Avar and I like Elzar. I think they're both incredible characters. Of the trio, Stellan was my favorite before he was killed
Mhm.
off at the end of phase 1. And I know I've talked about that ad nauseum, so I'm not going to dive into that anymore. I don't dislike the idea of these two rekindling a flame necessarily. I just hope whatever happens with that story is that we're not tumbling down the forbidden love angle that we got with Anakin and Padme one more time.
Mhm.
Because we've been there, we've done that, and I don't know that we necessarily need that Star Wars story again.
Mhm.
If that's what's the issue is going to be, make sure you blend in the action, make sure you give us all the other great Star Wars elements that go with it, and put them in a different place at the end of it. Just don't retell Anakin and Padme.
Sure, and I mean, the title could be a complete red herring too,
Mm-hmm.
because a temptation could be a temptation to the dark side. It could be, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what we're led to believe is that this is going to be sort of a romance, but maybe it'll take a completely different turn. Who knows? But I did appreciate the fact that Tessa, also right from the very beginning addressed Avar's skill in the Force of hearing things through the music and through the
Mm-hmm.
rhythm and just the tone of even the way that Elzar was feeling through the Force. And I liked being able to revisit that. So I did appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just looking at the description of this book on Amazon, it's um, after finally embracing their true desires and imbued with renewed purpose,
Oh,
Fair and Elzar devise a plan to turn the tide of the conflict with the Nile once and for all.
well. Oh.
So, prior to that, uh, to rally the Jedi and the Republic, Avar and Elzar cling to their belief in serving light and life. Together, they lead a daring mission in Nile space to liberate the planet of Naboo and show those trapped behind the storm that the Jedi will never abandon them. Now, back within close orbit of each other, the two Jedi Masters can no longer deny the bond that has always drawn them back together and made them stronger. So,
Well, there you go.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I mean, that they are definitely they are strongly hinting that there's going to
Mhm.
be a romance here
Indeed.
in
Mhm.
all of this, and they're making it steamy in the process. And you know, romance is one of the elements of Star Wars, whether
Oh,
it's
sure.
the love triangle of Han, Luke, and Leia before we found out Luke and Leia were brother and sister, and
Mhm.
Rey and Ben, and Anakin and Padme, and just going back to
Yeah.
some of the books and things like the other relationships we've seen over time. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I'm not going to criticize it for that. It's just that I don't think I've ever seen it written quite this way or
Yeah, that
described
is
this.
very interesting. I mean, even Lost Stars wasn't
Yeah,
quite as
that's the one I was
overt,
thinking of.
you
So,
know? And Dark Disciple, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a lot of examples out there, but yeah, that is definitely, out there.
yeah, that's the description I was thinking of, which reminded me of the grocery store checkout lane romance stuff. I
The old
remember having it.
Harlequin romance.
Yeah, the pink and purple
Uh-huh.
stuff that I remember having an English professor once talk about. So,
Well, Elzar's hair is getting longer,
mhm.
flowing in the wind.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he
Right.
could have like his Jedi tunic pulled down over his chest, open, whatever, and then she could have her chest hanging out of her robes as well, and then we could go all the way. But at least the cover is a bit more tasteful than that.
Yeah.
So
Well, he did have bare feet in this excerpt, so.
there is that. I, I was like, oh my, they're already going there in this one, like right from the get go. So, yeah, that'll be interesting.
Indeed.
Yeah. Oh, we still have to talk about the Living Force first before we even get back to that Republic.
Right. Yes, and we will do that. We definitely
And not a ton of romance in that one. So, okay.
will.
All right. Well, we're treading on dangerous ground here, slippery ice. So we should best move on. We have other books coming though, and these are some old Legends novels that will be added to the Essential Legends collection on June 4th. We have the Lando Calrissian Adventures by L. Neil Smith, Imperial Commando 501st by Karen Travis, and Rogue Squadron Iron Fist by Aaron Alston. I have to confess, I've only read Iron Fist out of this collection, but how about you?
And I have only read Imperial Commando 501st.
I
So,
was going
yeah.
to guess that one if you had read any of them
Yeah.
there.
So, yeah, I have not read either of the other ones. I actually had to look up Iron Fist to
Hmm.
see what it was about. I never got into the X-Wing Squadron books, but I know
Hmm.
that they're very beloved by a lot of people.
I love those. I read all of them. I vaguely remember this one because it's been such a long time. It's hard to go back and reread Star Wars books because we're getting like 5 or 6 of them a year.
Yeah.
And so there's not always the time to pick up a series. And if you're going to an X-Wing, you got to go back to the beginning of that one. And there's several of those to read. So maybe someday I'll read that one again. But I did not read Imperial Commando 501st by Karen Travis. I read all the books in that series leading up to that one. So what's your take on that book?
Oh, I love all of them. Honestly, I've always treasured every single one of them. So, I mean, I probably won't pick it up just because of the fact that I would have to go back and reread the other ones because I'm just that way.
Hmm.
But again, it is really cool to see these on the shelves and to see the new artwork and to see the new representation and to bring them, forward to a new generation of readers. That's for sure. But I have to ask you, as far as the Iron Fist goes, uh, how do you feel about that particular X-Wing, series of books being chosen out of the lot to represent?
Well, I think the entire series has made it into the Essential Collection
Has
at
it?
some point.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been doing them like in order, adding them there. And
Mhm.
those X-Wing books were a really fun series. I like them all quite a bit.
Mhm. Mhm.
Corran Horn is big in that series. Wedge is big in that series as well. So those are all worth reading. The Race Squadron that comes up, that's the feature of the last couple of books by Aaron Alston, is unique. I mean, you have a talking genius Gamorrean in them as well. That I remember. So yeah, I like those. The Lando Calrissian adventures. I couldn't help but think of the Calrissian Chronicles
Right. I thought the
when I read
same
that.
thing.
I haven't read those books. I am kind of tempted to pick that one up and to check it out. I'll just have to make time for it if I do. But I'd like to see what kind of adventures they wrote for Lando and the Legends before we got him, as we did, with the solo tie-ins and the such.
Yeah, I would be interested in that too, quite
Hmm.
honestly. Maybe that's something we can do together on the show.
Yeah, we have quite a reading list though.
We
So,
do. But
I'll
we can
pencil
always
it
put
in.
it in there.
But that might be like a 2026
Yeah.
project at this point.
Yeah, by that time.
All
It's a
right.
good problem to have.
Indeed, indeed. You can never get enough Star Wars content.
For sure.
Well, then that'll do it for this week's look at Star Wars news. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust as we covered it. We hope you've enjoyed it. And if you did, then make sure you hit the subscribe to Podcast Stardust and you'll get our weekly dose of Star Wars news, with a caveat that with me being on vacation, there won't be any news episodes for about 3 weeks. I'd also like to remind you that you can find some episodes of the show over on nurturesapp.com, which is home to several other great podcasts covering everything from the MCU and DC to Dune, Star Trek, and a whole lot more. We are looking for your feedback, and the best way to give us that is with a 5-star rating and review on your podcatcher of choice. It goes without saying, and I'm sure you've heard every podcast you listen to say this, regardless, that ratings and reviews are the best way to help the show get noticed by others. Something about the way the algorithm works. Fill in the blanks. But if you're not doing that, we also appreciate your sharing the show with your friends on your social media platforms, whichever they may be. So, with those things in mind, Jay, remind everybody what our social media contacts are and where else we can be found online.
Sure. We have a large presence online. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Podcast Stardust. And you can find us on all of your streaming platforms, including Spotify, YouTube, and YouTube Music. So head over there, like, subscribe, and share it out with your friends. And if you'd like to hit us up in real time and let us know your thoughts about any of the topics that we've discussed here or just anything in general about Star Wars, we have a Discord room on the Retros App Discord server. And so all you have to do is just go to the link in our show notes to connect with us there. And we also have a TeePublic store, which is tpublic.com/user/podcast stardust. And if you can't remember that, that's also in our show notes, all kinds of things. And we have 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of fun things. So if you're in need of new beachwear or t-shirts or a tote bag to take to the beach, or just anything in general, sitting out on your deck with a nice cup of coffee, we've got you covered. So head over to that link as I mentioned and you can pick something up. And you can also pick up some lightsabers, really great ones, as a matter of fact, from Saber Masters, where you can go to sabermasters.com and do some shopping. And if you do pick something up, such as the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, you can put in the code Stardust at checkout. That'll save you $10, and it also helps to support the show. So, Dennis, why don't you let everybody know what you've got going on right now? I know you've got, as you mentioned, you're going to be on vacation here. So, I know a little hiatus from things, but always past episodes are good too. So, fill everybody in.
Right. So you can find my wife and I talking about Star Trek over on Warp Trails. We are finishing up our coverage of season 5 of Discovery. And if you're interested in our thoughts on other Star Trek series, including Lower Decks, Picard, and Strange New Worlds, then the best place to find those right now are over on retrozap.com. Jay, what's the latest in cosplay?
All right. Well, you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. And you can catch me as Ahsoka, 2 different versions of Hera, both from the Ahsoka series as well as from Rebels, as well as my original concept Mandalorian and the Fourth Sister. And I will be in Medina, Ohio on June 1st, hanging out with Vanessa Marshall for the day. So you'll have to check out all my updates over there as well. And also check out Vanessa Marshall's updates on Instagram, and you can follow her on Twitter as well.
Yeah, we've got 2 more episodes coming up that are a bit more topical and current. Before I go on vacation, on Monday, we have we're taking a look at the Phantom Menace 21st Anniversary Special #1 from Marvel. So this is a comic that is filling in some blanks, and I don't want to say necessarily retelling, but think of the way E.K. Johnston retold the Battle of Naboo with Queen Amidala. This does the same around Anakin. So be on the lookout for that. Then on Wednesday, we've got more Phantom Menace coverage as we get into our next installment of our monthly series looking at 10 to 15-minute segments of the film. We have a special guest for that, so check that out. All right, that'll do it then for episode 733 of Podcast Stardust. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great weekend. Until next time, may the Force be with you.